of our most cherished memories are filled with adversity, and The Last of Us was hardly light on that. Naughty Dog have long since been at the forefront of game technology since the 90s, and in 2022 they have returned to remind everyone just how relevant they are, with a reimagining of arguably their greatest work to date. Not quite a remake and much more than a remaster, The Last of Us Part 1 on PlayStation 5 is almost the perfect meld of the old versus the new. Today I will be taking you through the improvements, the modes, what has changed and what has not in this modern classic. There may not be a dry eye in the house.
Was that everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out.
Now, the story of Joel and Ellie needs little to no introduction. Nothing has changed here on that front. If you've played this game on either the PS3 or PS4 consoles, then you get exactly the same journey through their story. What has changed though is the experience. Thanks to the updated Naughty Dog engine that raised the bar again with the sequel, this reinvigorated PS5 release has benefited greatly from that, but not in the case of simply porting everything over. Many of the new rendering techniques, such as the oil painting like materials in the world, the impeccable character models and skin rendering complete with movie level physically based shading, have brought the title bang up to date. This is the single biggest leap from both the previous two releases, and many of the models are the ones we saw in the sequel, such as Joel and Ellie from the flashbacks. The animation rigs and bone structure of the faces have also been improved, with significantly better valve forming of mouths and wider emotive sets of facial expressions. Some characters have also been redesigned from scratch, with Tess standing out as a drastic shift from the original. Changes to faces can also be a mixed blessing and subjective on which you may prefer, but the increase in detail, photorealism, movement and sheer fidelity cannot be argued. The quality here is exceptional and really brings the title in line almost with its sequel. This is because not everything is a match for that here. The team are still working within the core game engine code, motion captured vertex movement and performance capture. The original sequences here on both PS3 and PS4 were all still in engine but not real time. Instead rendered out to a video file via a PS3 rendering farm back in 2013, creating these pre-renders that we know and love. Here on PS5 they are all real time, but based on the exact same core data, which means the improvements to models, animations are all limited to certain areas within that. You can see the movement and timing of moment-to-moment gameplay and cutscenes are a match. Sure, camera shots can be altered, post-effects, shading quality, as here with the increases in light sources, edge lighting on characters and even minor changes to motion and skinning, but at its core, the new game is a fresh lick of the finest digital paint you can get over the old canvas underneath.
Oh, let's go, come on.
Now, beyond the models, the material composite post effects, which now includes their excellent per object motion blur, which has been improved since previous titles, the bokeh depth of field, subsurface scattering on hair, ears and even other objects, and improved decals for gore and such, many of the level constructions, the foliage, the assets and even textures and materials have all been improved, increased, remade or even changed completely. Shots here you can see not only the significant leap in poly count, but also the extra water towers, the improved brick, changes to debris and rubbish. Later the gate has been altered with new gate signs, drastic reduction of water bodies, a change to character models, something you will see across the title, with a much wider variety in models used. This does help change the look and feel of many scenes throughout the game as you play, but by no means night and day, but again highlights the effort and attention that went into rebuilding vast portions of the title. As you can see from these comparisons, the PS4 remaster, shown here in the best light possible with the Pro version, is still largely just a higher resolution version, both in output to screen and textures, of that PS3 original, which is almost 10 years old now next year. Still stands up well and highlights how ahead of the pack Naughty Dog were back then, and certainly leading the pack of maxing out the PlayStation 3, which I believe this title did. From a presentation perspective, the voice capture, sound effects, excellent soundtrack, set pieces, combat are all practically identical to the original. This means that the dodge mechanism from the second title is not here, nor is the enhanced dismemberment gore system, only the original game system remains. It's certainly still a violent game, and the blood pooling, decal impacts and other additions from the sequel have been added, but the core combat loop, the weapons, the melee are as per the original. This is likely again as a result of the core animation AI scripting of the base engine limiting some of the choices here. Similar to what we just covered in the animations itself, it is refined and better than the source versions, but it is still limited within those improvements, meaning enemies still react as they did, run at you, attack in the same way, hide, dodge. But not everything has been left out. Some things have been included in this port from the sequel. It now has the ability to leave one final enemy within a cleared out section into a down state, meaning you can have the chance for them to beg for mercy or just ask for a quick end, which can help satisfy the rage within from a particularly difficult section completed.
Please let me go.
Other tweaks come in the DuelSense use and inclusion of haptic feedback, adaptive triggers, improved sound mixing via 3D audio, and a slew of customized options to play how you want. Tutorials and menu pop-ups have also been improved, with it no longer placing it on hold during gameplay. The choice of play modes is also very welcome here, with the title having 2 core modes to pick from, with your TV type adding some caveats and extensions to this. Fundamentally, the new game has a native 4K fidelity mode and then a dynamic 4K performance mode. From here, if you have a 120 FPS screen, then the fidelity mode targets 40 FPS and not 30, which halves the difference between 30 and 60 by requiring 33% more performance, which it does exceptionally well. If you do not have a 120 FPS screen, then this same fidelity mode will now target 30 FPS. This is simply due to the frame time needed, with 40 FPS requiring a new frame every 25 milliseconds, which is divisible into 120, and 30 FPS requiring 33.3, which is not. The performance mode targets the same no matter which screen you have, and that is 60 FPS. And the final piece in this output puzzle is that of a VRR display. If you do have one, then a third option is available, unlocking the frame rate in both modes. This will then allow the 40 FPS target to be exceeded in fidelity, and that same 60 FPS target to also be removed within performance. Starting with the old PS3 first, a machine that certainly took a very unique architectural direction and needed to be developed in certain ways, Naughty Dog tamed the beast, but even they had an uphill battle squeezing out every last cycle for their final release on the platform. It was and remains an incredible piece of work, highlighting how capable the machine could be in the right hands, and in quieter moments it can run at 30 FPS with no issues. But once the action hots up, alpha effects, many light sources, shadows, high polygon load, and the frame rate can buckle into the low 20s and even worse at later points in the title. We never had any tearing, and it was worth the impact to enjoy this superb title back then, but the remaster only a year later was almost needed due to the console squealing at times whilst you played it.
Don't look, sir.
The PlayStation 4 remaster managed to more than double the resolutions of the PS3 720 to a full fat 1080. In addition, it not only solved the performance issues, it doubled it to 60 FPS. Something which was infamously difficult for the team, only managing to get it complete weeks before launch. That said, it was not locked and it could dip in combat and cinematics. The later Pro patch was 4K 60 at first, but due to feedback from some at the time, they dropped this to 1860, which we see here. The performance here can dip again into the low 50s, high 40s, but it's far from bad in most segments, and the 1080-60 option here cleans that up completely. The game though was still visually identical to the PlayStation 3 version, aside this increase in resolution and textures, but it did at least run very well on both consoles.
Some fresh air.
So starting with that dynamic 4K performance mode gives us a locked 60 FPS in all tested sections, with no doubt room to spare. The only dips come from camera cuts during cinematics, which are intended to help physics settle or swap assets between shots. The short version is, if you want to experience the most consistent performance level, then turn this on and never look back.
The doorway! Son of a bitch! Take your hands off him!
Just like I taught you.
The need for a native 4K output though can be strong, and as such the 30 FPS mode is the same story, never dipping below it. Here in my unlocked 40 FPS mode test, you can see that it actually holds above that as well, with the fidelity mode actually hitting 50 FPS in quieter sections, all at 4K. In action or real-time cutscenes though, it can hover somewhere around the mid 45 mark, meaning we are getting approximately 50% higher performance over the 30 FPS mode, and it really highlights how much more performance is left in the PS5. In dense areas with fog volumes, particles, shadow casting and light sources, it can dip into the mid 30s, but these are rare from all my tests, and as such it offers the cleanest IQ and very smooth performance, feeling closer to 60 than 30, and it could be a big pull for many. I will state though that you can feel the dips to the low 30s when they do crop up in this mode, albeit they are very rare.
You don't want to do this.
Turn the around and leave now.
I'm not going anywhere without Robert.
So the final mode is the unlocked performance one, and this again can see around 65% increase over that previous 60 FPS cap, now allowing the engine to hit 100 in rare circumstances, with general action and cinematics hovering somewhere in the middle. Due to the mode requiring VRR to work, the fact the frame rates always stay north of that 60 FPS base means it is the fastest mode to play here. Again, the only change between this and the fidelity mode is the dynamically shifted resolution from that 4K target, likely to a 1440p base. But in some counted sections, it can be at that same 4K target or just below, meaning the balance of pixels and performance is kept in focus. The extra response this mode gives does help in combat sections, and I'm impressed by how fast and clean this mode is considering how much is being pushed here. The choice of the two modes with the noted extensions on that mean you will certainly find a mode that works best for you, and the team must be commended by adding these options into the title, making it very easy to swap between them.
You picked the wrong day to screw with us.
Go fuck yourselves.
Stay quiet.
Oh no!
Good shot.
The remake or remaster can be a blessing or a curse. With this being the second time we've seen it, some may say it's not required. However, the exhaustive upgrades on offer here are hard to ignore. It's never looked better than now, with models and world detail being close to the sequel. It's not quite at the same level of fidelity, but certainly close enough in the vast majority to stand proud on the PS5. You can still see areas of the older title underneath. Incidental objects can be low poly count. The real-time cutscene models and lighting still look much better than in-game at times. They are the same models, but the lighting, shading, detail and bone rigs are not. And the loading can still be relatively slow, a few seconds certainly, and certainly a hell of a lot quicker than the original PS3 and PS4 remaster, but the core engine limitations are there with that decompression and even the animation cycle running when you load into a game. If you have already played and completed this stunning title, this update is the best way to play for sure. Sympathetically upgraded and improved across the board. Just do not expect anything different here over the old version, aside the visual niceties and performance increases, as you will be sorely disappointed. That though is the beauty of a new release like this. Many will have never played this title as yet, and now the PlayStation 5 houses the absolute best way to enjoy it for the first or fifth time.
What? I don't hear anything.
Okay, double time.
And that's it for another deep dive into game technology. If you like this, then keep it IGN Performance Reviews, and we'll catch you on the next one.